What's up, everybody? My name is Kenneth, and I am a foreigner living in the Philippines, here today to react and learn to why the US has so many Filipino nurses. This video is by Vox and has been recommended to me. I'll put the name on screen. So thank you very much for recommending this. This looks very interesting to me because I've heard about all the Filipino nurses that are working abroad. But why specifically the US has so many, I don't really understand. So I thought this video would be interesting to watch with you guys, and we can watch and learn together. And yeah, so if you guys have any other videos you want me to react to also, you can let me know in the comments as always, and I'll check that out. And if I end up choosing your video, then I'll credit you in the video, of course. Alright guys, but without further ado, let's go into this video and see why there is so many Filipino nurses in the USA. Let's go.
The Philippines has a problem. On top of fighting the spread of the coronavirus, hospitals are facing another crisis. They are more than 20,000 nurses short. But the thing is, tens of thousands of nurses...
Really? The Philippines is 20,000 nurses short, but they produce so many nurses. Yeah, I always thought to myself, that will be kind of like difficult for the Philippines. Like, if all the skilled workers are leaving for higher salaries, then who's gonna be in the Philippines take care of the Filipino people? I always wondered if the Philippine government actually likes this working abroad culture that exists in the Philippines, or if it's seen as something negative that they need to combat. I don't know. Let me know.
Graduate every year in the Philippines. This 2010 oath-taking ceremony included more than 35,000 graduating nurses.
Wow.
And this is a graduating class from 2017, and this one is from 2019.
They're 20,000 short, but in just 1 year, 35,000 graduate, and still they can't fill that gap? Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If you're a Filipino nurse, if you're a nurse, why would you work in the Philippines when you can work overseas and earn way more? There needs to be some sort of incentive, right?
So how can the Philippines have so many nurses and be dealing with a shortage at the same time? This story starts in 1898, when the Philippines became a U.S. colony.
It goes back far, huh?
Filipinos fought back, but were ultimately conquered by American troops. More than 200,000 Filipinos died. As part of the colonization of the Philippines, the U.S. created a policy called benevolent assimilation that claimed to protect Filipino rights and liberties.
They used this to justify the colonization of the Philippines by arguing that this was a different kind of colonialism and imperialism. This was a good kind of colonialism that would bring education, infrastructure, and public health.
The U.S. started taking over institutions and education and began developing a medical labor force in the Philippines.
Yeah, I've learned in previous videos I've watched in this channel that Americans brought a lot of school and education to the Philippines. So that's something good that came out of it. So I guess that's the only benefit. Obviously, it's a bad thing that happened, but at least there were some benefits from it.
They built more than 10 nursing schools in less than a decade. Filipino nursing students had to learn Western medical practices from American teachers, and they were forced to learn in English. Year after year, new classes of American-trained, English-speaking Filipino nurses graduated from nursing schools.
What this did was that it inadvertently...
So my question is, why nursing or like medical? Like if you want to teach them, you want to give them education, you want to train them, you want to create an English-speaking workforce, why not engineers or mechanics? Why did they choose specifically nurses? Like or medical training? Why did they specifically give medical training to the Filipinos? I don't get that. Maybe the Filipinos just chose that. Maybe they got an option to study anything at these American-built schools, and then they all chose medical fields. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. That would be interesting.
Prepared Filipino nurses to work in the United States.
The nursing training system went on until the Philippines gained independence in 1946.
The independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.
Wow.
But even
Nice.
though the Philippines broke free, America soon found a way to bring Filipino nurses over. Starting in 1941, after the U.S. entered World War II, millions of Americans joined the armed forces, and thousands of nurses enlisted to treat injured soldiers in the field. And American hospitals
That makes sense. Yeah, a lot of wounded soldiers, and you have a huge influx in need for nurses. And there's a lot of freshly trained Filipinos. So they were chosen, or they got the jobs, I guess. It makes sense.
started emptying out. So the government funded programs like the Cadet Nurse Corps to fill the gaps.
Wow.
They provided millions of dollars for a lifetime education for free and encouraged American women in particular to enlist in a proud profession. As a result, nearly 200,000 American women became nurses for the Army and civilian hospitals.
American women, okay. So I'm interested to see how the Filipinos took over this field, because it started with American women, right? And then Filipinos took over.
All working with the same purpose, to ease the pain of war, to help save lives.
But that all changed in 1945, when the war came to an end. Once the fighting was over, there was less support for nurses. Government funding dried up, and many women quit nursing. Hospitals started seeing a rise in vacancies, and that meant America needed to find nurses to fill the void again.
So that's how that happened.
Instead of improving pay and working conditions to encourage American nurses to return, the U.S. looked beyond its borders to fill the jobs Americans wouldn't take, and it turned to a new temporary visitors program as a solution.
This is strange to me because in my country of Norway, in Europe, being a nurse is like a highly paid thing. It's not a job you wouldn't take because you want a high salary, because that is where you get the high salary. That's like what everyone aspires to be. Like jobs you wouldn't take is like taxi driver, bus driver. Those often in Norway get outsourced to immigrants or people from other countries, cleaning personnel, stuff like that. But nurses, like, that is very strange to me. I don't know how the US works. Maybe they get paid very little, nurses, I guess. Interesting.
U.S. hospitals started to use the exchange visitor program in order to recruit Filipino nurses because they had Americanized nursing training.
And guys, if you hear any karaoke singing in the background of this video, I do actually live in the Philippines, and this is proof. So don't mind that, guys.
Already.
And it worked. Filipino nurses dominated the program. For about a decade,
That makes
more
sense.
than 10,000 Filipino nurses came to the U.S. to work.
Wow.
But the real reason so many left their homes has to do with what was happening in the Philippines at the time.
Really?
After centuries of oppressive colonial control and their own World War II battles, the Philippines' economy finally started to stabilize. Cities were flourishing and tourism was booming, but wages,
Nice.
particularly in rural areas, were still low for nearly everyone. And that included nurses, who, despite
Wow.
having formal training, were often paid less than janitors or messengers. And that pushed
What? Nurses paid less than janitors? That is incredible. How is that possible? How? Such a skilled job. Like, you need actual training. Well, a janitor, anyone can be. But still you get paid less? How does that even make sense? How did that happen? Oh, maybe it was because, if I'm correct, guys, let me know. I think it's because there's so many nurses. Maybe there's more nurses in the Philippines than the Philippines actually needed. So the salary was super low because the competition was so high. That could make sense.
many to go abroad in search of better opportunities. But when they came over to the US, many sponsoring hospitals just used them as inexpensive labor. They assigned them extensive nurse work and only paid them a minimal stipend. After their temporary placements ended, many Filipino nurses went back to the Philippines, while many others managed to stay longer and build a life in the US, where they formed strong Filipino communities. But the exchange visitor program wasn't the end of America's hold on Filipino nurses. It was just the beginning. The 1960s brought big changes to America.
There are certain historical events, new Great Society programs such as the establishment of Medicare and Medicaid. There are civil rights and women's social movements. American women have more opportunities to enter other kinds of occupations. All of these things converge to increase the demand for nursing services, but also to result in even more nursing shortages in the United States.
Okay, so American women kind of got more rights and they started choosing other professions other than nursing, like traditional professions. Like nursing, they chose other things like engineer, I don't know, banker, anything. And therefore the shortage increased even more. And so they had to bring in even more Filipinos. That makes sense.
Just 3 years, nurse vacancies nearly doubled. Nearly 1 in every 4 nursing jobs was vacant.
Wow.
To fill the new shortage, the U.S. turned to the Philippines once again. But this time, it was different. Immigration policy in America changed drastically in 1965 with the new Immigration and Nationality Act. For the first time, people from all over the world could apply for immigrant visas. Then, on top of sponsoring hospitals, labor recruiters and travel agencies started targeting Filipino nurses with ads that promised them bright futures in America.
One particular ad featured a basket that was decorated with the Philippine flag. It's addressing the Filipino nurse saying, "Dear nurse, if you're not happy where you are right now, contact us. And we can't promise you happiness, but we can help you chase it all over the place."
So Filipino nurses began filling the huge shortages all around the U.S. But soon, many experienced discrimination. The American Nurse Association added licensing.
I was gonna say, is this something Filipinos like? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. It's nice to have the opportunity to leave the country and travel and get paid while doing it. But if there's like discrimination and you get lower wage, I mean, that's kind of bad, right? What do you Filipino people think about this? About all the nurses everywhere else but in the Philippines? Is that it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Requirements to limit their entry. The nurses who did pass those requirements came to the U.S. and ended up in underpaid, lower positions. Still, it's this phase of migration that lasted through today and transformed the U.S. healthcare industry. The temporary pathway, established 20 years earlier, became a permanent migration route, and the hospitals now had a way to lure nurses over whenever they wanted. But focusing on what pulled so many nurses to America overlooks the forces that continue to push them out. Which brings us back to the Philippines.
Yeah, is the wages still lower than janitors? Like, why would you move?
This is Ferdinand Marcos, who ruled the Philippines with an iron fist. In 1972, under martial law, he began to rule as a dictator. He was behind more than 3,000 extrajudicial killings and tens of thousands of tortures and incarcerations.
Wow.
As a result of the unrest, the economy that was starting to stabilize fell into a recession and unemployment skyrocketed. But instead of addressing the lack of jobs,
the Philippine government actively promoted and publicized labor export, the export of Filipino workers to countries.
So the government actually promoted it. But I do wonder if they kind of regret doing that now. Now they have these shortages. But in the beginning, they actually promoted the labor export. Interesting.
Throughout the world.
And that's because Filipino overseas workers were starting to send hundreds of millions of dollars back home to their families. And the Filipino government wanted to keep that money coming. Over time, that government push led to a global migration, making the Philippines the largest exporter of nurses in the world.
And not just nurses, from my experience. You see Filipino people in every single country, just like shopkeepers, they work at as clerks. You see everywhere, all kind of jobs. Every country I've been to, I've met Filipino people there. So it's a real thing, this human export. And again, I wonder what Filipino people think about this. Is this a really cool thing? I mean, there's no other country where you can kind of like go anywhere and everyone will know who you are because everyone's met a Filipino. So it's kind of cool.
Nearly 20,000 nurses leave the Philippines every year. They go to Saudi Arabia or Australia, the UK, Germany, but many of them have ended up in the US, where nearly 1/3 of all foreign-born nurses are Filipino. With the US recruiting nurses on one end and the Philippines pushing them to work abroad on the other, both
That makes
governments
sense.
have benefited from Filipino labor. Over the decades, a total of 150,000 Filipino nurses
Wow.
have come to work in U.S. hospitals. And after years of exploitation and discrimination, Filipino and Filipino-American nurses have organized in the U.S. They pushed back on exploitative practices and have fought for better working conditions. But surveys show that a large number of Filipino nurses are still concentrated in bedside and critical care, some of the most dangerous and strenuous nursing work.
Wow.
It's the kind of work that puts them disproportionately on the front lines of the fight against the coronavirus. The pandemic has taken an outsized toll.
Yeah, I guess this video is 5 years old. It's kind of around Corona time, and I can understand that's actually that was probably a big concern back then, because that's kind of unfair. The Filipino nurses will be on the front line of fighting the coronavirus and probably way more likely to get it, which means they can, infect family members and worst case death, right? So yeah, it's not fair.
Filipino healthcare workers. Of the 318 healthcare workers lost to the coronavirus as of May, at least 30 are Filipino. And
Wow.
still, thousands remain on the front lines. In April 2020, as the coronavirus spread through the Philippines and the shortage of nurses across hospitals became a problem, the government temporarily banned healthcare workers from leaving to work abroad.
Oh,
While
really?
it might seem
I
like
wonder if that had like big consequence in the US. Did they have like a massive shortage all of a sudden because of this ban?
a appropriate idea for Filipino nurses to remain in the Philippines, it's also important to remember that Filipino nurse overseas migration is a long-standing phenomenon that has been actively promoted by the Philippine government.
Even though the ban was eventually lifted, it points to the instability that Filipino nurses have to live with on both sides of the migration route.
What's Trump rules bar foreign nurses willing to help the US? I don't know what this means.
Pushed and pulled between countries, Filipino nurses continue to get caught in the middle, even as they
Right.
strive to work on the front lines,
Yeah,
provide
you're told to go overseas and work, and then you're banned from doing it, and then you're told to do it again. That's confusing.
critical care like they always have.
Alright, and that's the end of the video. I do actually still wonder why medical work was what was chosen for the Filipinos back in the colonial days when the Americans built schools. If you guys know that, please let me know. Like, why did Filipinos become nurses and not engineers? Why? I don't get that. Like, why exactly that field? Anyways, guys, this was a really good video. I'm gonna give this a like. This is by Vox, so go check them out. Again, thank you so much for suggesting this video. I really enjoy this. If you want to see more videos like this, guys, I make one video every single day reacting to the Philippines, history, culture, everything, you name it. And yeah, if you have any other videos you want me to watch, you can also let me know in the comments and I'll check that out. Alright, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next video. Alright, bye bye.